Hello, everybody. Today we are going to be reviewing the show The Mist, which came out actually quite a few, or 8 years ago, I guess now, but I'm just finally getting around to watching it. Like I said, again, I've had so much on this list on Netflix since I've subscribed to Netflix, I guess that I'm just finally going through a lot of it now, and I do have a very extensive list. As you can see, my little notebook here that I have of I think I have about 4 or 5 pages of stuff now to go through over the next few months. And then as I go, obviously, I write down like what I've reviewed currently so that I don't redo it, obviously, right? But I'm going to be sticking with this because I'm actually been really enjoying getting back into the movie and TV show reviews. So hopefully I can get a few movies done in the next few weeks. Some of the next few ones that I've tried to find might have to look on YouTube to see if they're still there. But yeah, I guess we'll just cross that bridge when we come to it. If we have to skip a couple and come back to them, we will. But at least I found Out of Liberty. So, but today we're going to be talking about the show The Mist, which is based on the Stephen King novel. Now, I couldn't tell you which adaptation actually follows a novel better, whether the movie follows it better with just the creature in the mist, or whether the show actually follows it better, where it seems like the mist kind of feeds off of people's fears as opposed to anything else. And it's almost like the mist, even though it was keeping people indoors, so it was actually driving people insane more inside than it was outside being in the mist, technically, I would find. Because a lot of people decided to just kind of brave it and go out into the mist. Of course, it does kind of mess with your head, as we see with certain people, and it's almost like the mist was like a natural thing that was kind of, I guess, in a sense, the one lady thought it was kind of like a natural, like a nature thing that was taking the people out that were meant to be taken out, and then the mist would disappear. Obviously, that's not true. They find it at the end of the show that the military is actually feeding the mist when they drop off a whole bunch of criminals from a train. So we're not really sure exactly what's been going on, but yeah, that was definitely a different twist ending than the movie has, where he kills everybody in the car, and then all of a sudden the military runs through or is there and saving everybody. Right? It was like that was a big twist at that one in that they did in the movie, and a big twist that they did in the show as well. Uh, but yeah, I just felt like there was. It, I don't. I don't really want to say it felt like two different shows because everything kind of ended up connecting at the end, like when everybody ended up getting together. Uh, but obviously, they did a all right job at. There was some things that I felt they could have explained better, like what exactly was the mist? Why was it there? Everybody had like their theories, but there was never really any definitive uh, point to the mist at the end of the show. I found it was kind of just like it ends up just kind of killing everybody, but we don't really know why. Um, other than yeah, it kind of seemed like it was just feeding off of people's fears or maybe their wrongdoings. Like it was kind of too open ended almost to really find out exactly why the mist was there, why it chose that town. Now, I do believe that obviously the military guys that were in the group in the mall probably knew what was going on and why it was there. Of course, they ended up escaping, so I'm not really sure where they're going to go. Uh, but yeah, I have a feeling that some people knew what was actually taking place, and nobody really ever thought to question them further than just the one episode, like as to why they were here. And of course, the one guy says, "Well, I was just following orders, like I was sent here," but doesn't. And then they don't really go into any more explanation as to like what his purpose there was. Other than obviously, I guess, to find Jonah, who is thinking that he's this Brian Hunt guy, or was he actually Brian Hunt? It's hard to say because in one episode there was two people who were claiming to be Brian Hunt, so it's kind of confusing as to who he actually might be. Is he Jonah? Is he Brian Hunt? I guess we'll never know because there isn't clearly going to be a second season of the show. if it's been since 2017 since they've even had it on Netflix. So Morgan Spector played Kevin Copeland, who honestly, easily I think became my favorite character in the show. Alyssa Alyssa Sutherland played Eve Copeland. Gus Burney played Alex Copeland. Danica Garcia played Mia Lambert, who was, I guess, kind of like became friends with Kevin along the way, and obviously they formed like kind of like a group when they were out and about, traveling from place to place. Now, I will say this: sometimes it was hard to tell. Like, they did a good job of keeping you kind of like your head spinning in a sense, because sometimes it was hard to tell like what was a hallucination and what was real. I think they did a pretty good job at that. Kenzie Morrow played Brian Hunt, or Jonah, as we know him a little bit later on in the show. Luke Cosgrove played Jay Heisel, who was this kid at the party who was unfortunately accused of sexually assaulting Alex, and that ended up not being true. It was actually somebody else, and I had my suspicions as to who it was throughout the show, because it just seemed like, I don't know, I'm not saying that somebody who does that wouldn't necessarily take the route of trying to play innocent, but it just seemed like he was like confused as to why he was being blamed for what he was being blamed for. And even in the school, when the cops come to pick him up and say, you know, you're being brought in on suspicion of a sexual assault, he didn't even like think that as his first thought. Like, he was like, is there something wrong with my dad? Like, is everything okay, sort of thing? And of course the cops were kind of like beating around the bush about it, and then they're like, no, you have to come in because of this. So Darren Petit played Connor Heisel, Jay Heisel, Connor Heisel. I think that's how you pronounce their names anyway. And of course he thought that his son had, you know, done the bad deed, I guess, as well, and eventually sacrifices him to the mist. Even though we know at that point that Jay didn't actually do it, I was like, oh my god, dude, you're listening to this cooped up lady who thinks that, you know, everybody should be sacrificed to the mist, and then she ends up dying herself at the end of the show, which was a weird death scene, because I'm not really sure if she had like an unborn child that she was hallucinating about, and yeah, it was just very weird with the way she died. We had Russell Posner as Adrian Garf, who was the actual one that had sexually assaulted Alex. And he admits it to Alex's father, Kevin, in the one house after he had... Oh, sorry. Something bugging me on my foot. After he had killed his own father, he admits it because, of course, Kevin finds the drugs in his cabinet, and then he tries to play it off like he didn't want Jay to have her. He was in love with her, so that's why he did what he did, because he didn't want Alex to have a choice. And I was like, okay, dude, you are just an absolute psychopath. Like, kills his father. Of course, obviously, his father was definitely not the greatest to him, but finding out his true colors kind of made me go, maybe there was a reason that your dad was the way he was with you, because he didn't really care about like who you loved or who you were as a... He cared more about who he was as a person, and apparently he's a little bit of a psychopath, as we find out as the show goes on. Frances Conroy played Nathalie Raven. I think that's how you pronounce her name. I don't know why I'm having such a hard time saying that, but I think everybody just kind of called her Miss Raven throughout most of the show. And she was the one that definitely thought the mist had some sort of like natural, like it was part of nature. And she kept saying that it was like the black spring was here, sort of thing. So she had like like a connection to it, I guess, or something. And she kept talking about like what had happened in the past in like the 1800s, and now it was coming back around again. And I think at the end, Connor kind of realized that he had done the wrong thing because she just kind of started sputtering a bunch of nonsense. And I think he kind of came to the realization that everything he had done up to that point was just almost for nothing, which is unfortunate because he ended up killing his own son, and his son was actually innocent. So, of course, that isn't going to be the person the mist wants to be sacrificed to it. It's just going to take him anyway, regardless, because you're feeding it, right? Then we had Isaac Whitlock Jr. as Gus Bradley, who was the owner of the mall, and he ended up killing this Shirley girl and then blaming it on Alex because she was already thinking that Alex was somehow connected to the mist because it didn't kill her, but it had killed her daughter. And I know that it was a sad moment in the show for sure because her daughter was fairly young, but to start just blaming other people and trying to find some sort of connection as to why the mist or the creature in the mist didn't kill her and let her live, we're not really sure. I guess maybe because Alex was pure. Maybe that's why it decided not to kill her. I'm not sure why it decided to kill the other girl, but yeah, it just seemed kind of weird. Like sometimes it would pick at random as to who it wanted to kill, but then it tries to kill her in the last episode of the show. So I'm not really sure exactly what had happened between, the time it didn't want to kill her and the time it did. It just seemed kind of odd. Which is another part that I'm kind of confused about because, yeah, if it was supposed to be killing people for like their sins and so on and so forth, then why did it decide to hurt her in one episode but then not touch her in the next? Yeah, you know what I mean? Like it didn't want to hurt her in one episode, hurts her in the last episode. Kind of odd, but anyway, it is what it is. Then we had Eric Knudsen as Vic, who ends up being kicked out of the mall, and I thought for sure that he wasn't going to survive at all. I was like, oh my god, this kid's probably going to die, but they wanted him out of the mall because of, I guess, the chaos he was causing. I can't remember exactly why they kicked him out. I almost forgot. I've kind of forgotten why exactly they kicked him out again. But, that was just kind of what the group voted, I think, and they ended up deciding to kick him out, and so much happens that you actually forget about him a little bit, and then he just kind of jumps back in the last couple episodes. So I was like, oh my god, he's still alive. Like, I remember them kicking him out of the mall, but I can't remember why they kicked him out of the mall exactly. And then we had Dan Butler playing Father Romanoff, who obviously had the like religious connection to the mist, thinking that it was like a sign from God, so on and so forth. His death, honestly, was probably the coolest, I think, because when he goes out into the mist to challenge Miss Raven, because he says, I have my faith in God. I believe that God will protect me, and you think that nature is going to protect you. So we both go to the mist, and whoever dies, obviously they will know that the person who comes back from the mist is the person that all the people that have come to gather in this church will follow, right? Now, I think they probably chose wrong, but Dr. Romanoff's death scene was probably the coolest because it was like all of a sudden you hear like the horse's footsteps coming closer, and I was like, okay, he's about to see the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, and I was right. I nailed that. And I was pretty proud of myself for that. When all 4 horsemen pull up and he tries to like do a little prayer, and they shoot an arrow into him and drag him back into the mist. I was like, okay, so he was truly scared, and eventually he just let his fear overcome him. Then we had Peter Murnick as Mike Copeland, who was, I'm pretty sure it was, don't quote me on this completely, but I'm pretty sure it was Kevin's brother, who he tries to save in the hospital. and eventually all these leeches get him somehow. Now, I'm not sure whether that was a hallucination or whether that was actually happening in the hospital. It's hard to say because there was parts of the hospital that, were taken over by the mist, but he was trying to save his brother and unfortunately couldn't do it. And that was really the standout characters in the episode, and I guess a lot of the standout moments. Now, it was unfortunate because obviously as the show went on, Alex and Jay ended up having a pretty good relationship throughout the show, but of course her mother always wanted to get involved. Eve tried to, separate her and Jay constantly because she thought he was the one that had done the sexual assault, which wasn't true. And then, of course, I'm like, please let Kevin get to the mall before Adrian ends up killing them all, because he's just absolutely gone completely ballistic at this point, and he thinks that what he's done is going to save Alex. And I was like, oh my god. And somehow he ends up at the back of the car with the two military guys in the very last episode. So I don't know exactly what's going to happen to him, but I don't think it's going to be anything good if he ends up where they're going. So it is what it is. But this show did start off pretty strong with Jonah, who we knew as then absolutely nobody. Just a mist kind of rolls in and ends up killing his dog. He wakes up in the middle of the forest not knowing who he is, where he is, why he's there, sort of thing, and then the mist rolls in and just starts its absolute chaos. So the show started off strong, but there was just a lot of stuff that I felt they could have explained a little bit better. Yeah, there was just a few things missing from the show. But I think they tried to connect it as best as they could in, 10 episodes. Now, maybe a second season would have explained it a little bit better, because that twist at the end where the military is sending in criminals to feed the mist, I was like, okay, there's something bigger going on here. And yes, obviously the military knew more than they were letting on. Even the military personnel that was in, like, the regular civilian crowd, they were there for a reason. We're just not sure what it is exactly. So I guess we'll have to kind of speculate, or maybe read the book, because maybe the book explains a little bit better. It probably does. But yeah, it was definitely different from the movie, having like a creature in the mist that was slowly killing everybody. And it was kind of interesting to see the groups divide. The group divided in the mall, and obviously like the people who were out and about trying to survive from place to place. Like, yeah, some people definitely had it rougher than others in this show for sure. But yeah, I feel like that was pretty much the most standout moments and standout characters for sure. And yeah, I guess I will see you guys in the next review. Bye bye for now.